I'm going to show you guys how I took this amazing cover done by Greg Capullo for the Joker Endgame and turned it into a statue using ZBRUSH and Blender. Step number one whenever I start a project is always to reference. That's gonna be the be all end all of any project that you begin. If you don't know something, don't guess, just get references. I have hands here, trousers there, faces here, and various poses. You'll even find me and my wife in here. I'll have all of that obvious stuff, but then I'll get other references. I'll have mood references, I'll have lighting references, and I'll have quality references. Mood and lighting, self-explanatory, just so I can have some type of direction as I'm going along with my scene. But the quality reference is more about how I want to do details or how I want to approach certain things. Like hair, for example, on this project is different from what I would normally do. So you just make sure you have everything you need to inform all of those decisions whenever you're working on something. I like beginning with a sphere just because it's personal work, so it's fun. Now I know this isn't pretty, but it gave me everything I needed. It gave me the proportions, it gave me a rough look, and honestly if I put this in the final lighting, it wouldn't look like the final image, but it wouldn't look terrible. If we squinted our eyes a little bit. Beyond this point, all I really did was begin refining. So this is the refinement layer. Now from hair to hair, the main difference is just separating things out. So I separated the arms and cuffs and all that stuff and just got the props there. And I began more detail on the face, but it's just getting the basic structure of that face blocked in there. Now we move from the refinement to this posing layer. Now the main purpose here is to get the Joker more blocked out, so you can see I really push his pose a lot more. It's subtle things, but subtle things that I emphasize a lot. So I push that shoulder out, make his chest feel puffed up like he just won against the Batman. The legs are still fairly stiff, which I address a little bit later, but the hands there, which is this hand is vital. So I wanted to make sure that we got that crunch or the feeling of the fist closing around the batarangs, and I wanted this one to rest because I needed that contrast of victory and now we can rest, right? So that's the sort of story or that triumph that you need to feel throughout the sculpt. The next one were the extras. So again, we can see the change in one layer, but this took very long, and it was the same process as the Joker. So the next stage after this was extra refinement, and then after this we come to the final. And that's just again after the refinement of all of this stuff, and we have some tiling details on the Joker that was just done with the surface submenu. To sum all of that up, I wanted to just show a preview of me making a random generic asset after the fact. So I took one of the work in progress shots, and now you're seeing me separate this sleeve. So I usually separate everything at around the seams, and now you're just seeing me use group loops. That's just to clean up those edges that are left when it's jagged. And now I'm just gonna fill that hole, and then we're gonna begin sculpting on this. So that's essentially our low poly after I Z remeshed it. So very quick, very dirty, good topology for sculpting, but not final topology for animation. And now you're seeing me blocking in the primary forms. Throughout all of this, I'm just using the standard brush, and you can see I'm just going in the direction those folds would be. Nothing crazy, but blocking in primary forms is underrated. The main thing to consider here or keep in mind is just remain at a low subdivision level. The main mistake I see people make is just going too high too quickly. You can see how effortless it looks when you remain low, and that's the key. You can smooth, you can move things around, you're not committed to anything, it just makes life a lot easier. So I just went up a subdivision level, and hopefully you saw that I used up pretty much all the polygons I had, and I didn't really have any more wiggle room on a lot of those folds. So that's when I typically go up a subdivision level. You don't need to rush it, and you don't need to go up before then. So I've just skipped ahead a little bit. And you can see that everything from subdivision level 1 especially, but obviously also 2, is present and accounted for in subdivision level 3. So this is just the final polish layer, and all I'm doing is adding volume to the peaks of those folds. One thing that irritates me is seeing folds that look like it's just damn standard and it's straight up and down all the way, so that always helps. Look development is made up of texturing, shading, and lighting. While we're in ZBRUSH, we're just gonna have a look at the textures that I put on this character. I kept everything flat because of the style that we're going for. We wanted it to look like it's from a comic book. If I started adding too much details, then it would start looking hyper realistic. And I didn't add any ambient occlusion or anything like that in terms of the colors, because I did all of that inside of Blender. Before going into Blender, I had to mention Gobi. It's a plugin that allows you to transfer all of these different things seamlessly between ZBRUSH and Blender at the click of a button, make updates, and then transfer it back. It's a free add-on that I would highly recommend, so if you want it, head over to Google, write Gobi Blender, click on the first link, and then follow the installation instructions. To make our material, we're actually jumping back online, where we're going to search for Eevee NPR shader. This is going to take us to a web page called Experiments with NPR Toon Shading in Eevee. IDX has done some really cool work, so it's definitely worth reading through the blog. When you come to the end, you're going to find a download link with all of those toon shaders, and that's what we need. So after using Go-Z to hopefully get our model from ZBrush to Blender, we're going to append the rest of those toon shaders into the scene. So we're going to go File, Append, locate where that file was saved, and then we're going to double click that file. Once you double click, you're going to see all of the assets that we have. All we want are materials, and now you're going to see all of those NPR underscore materials. We're going to click and drag all of those and then hit append. From appending, now you'll see that we have all of those NPR materials inside of our materials section in Blender. So now I'm going to switch from the material preview mode to the rendering mode. Now what I'll do is I'll actually test out each of these just to see how they look and what type of effect they give off. We can really use any of them to achieve our goal, but you guys can go around and have some fun and see which one applies best to what you're working with. For our example, we're going to go with NPR1. So we're going to go there, and all I'm going to do is copy and paste this. So let's copy that, go back to our material, paste it inside of here, move this up. So we're going to mix our vertex color that's coming when we import it with Gobi. If you don't use Gobi, you can just assign a vertex color node by searching for it, and you'll get the same result. So that's no worries. Now we're going to use a mix RGB node. Drop that here, and we're going to mix our toon shader. Put that in color 1 with our vertex color, and then just drop both of those in base color. You're going to notice that you're seeing some of that toon shader coming through. We need to change these colors, so I'm going to make this black and the other color white, just so it's easier for us to see what's going on. And I'm also going to turn down the saturation, because I personally don't want saturation, but you guys can go for it. And now we're just going to slide this down, and you can see the colors coming through. Just gave us some more space. Now this is going to look washed out, but what we're going to do is use this color to actually mask this off as well. And now you can see that we have the dark areas with our original color. So now all it's a case of is going in and tweaking these sliders. I'm going to add one more, move this over, and then add another, and move this tight to this, but give us enough room that we can have a line. So now you can see when I look at this, it doesn't look like our original because these lines are jagged. That's just because I decimated this model. So you do have to have a good amount of polys for this, but you can also just smooth your model. So I'm just going to shade smooth, and now you'll see that these lines are smoother. And that's how I got the look. So with the hair and the glasses and other things, all I did was replicated this technique with different NPR shaders and just tweak the values and the sliders. There's lots of settings with these, so you guys can play around and find what looks best for your project. For the lighting, I'll start off with the HDRI. It's set to 0.035, which is very low, but when I unmute it, you'll see that all it does is it just fills in a little bit of the shadows and gives us something to work with in the beginning. I don't like having shadows that are pitch black, depending on the project, but for this one I wanted something there. Now let's have a look at the key lights. So for the key lights, the way I think about them is I want to position them in areas of interest. So I want to position them in places that I want everyone to see. So this is the main lighting that we put down on anything. Now let's turn on the fill lights, because these are what I usually do next. And those just fill in areas that the key lights don't catch. So for example, I want these faces, these two faces to be seen, and I want the lady's back to have color on it because I don't want it to just fall into darkness. But with rim lights, I usually go a little bit crazy on those. So we have 9 rim lights, and that's because The rim lights, I want them to highlight certain things. So I want the rim around the face so you can catch it against the background. Same thing with the hand, same thing with this guy standing behind the Joker, so on and so forth. So that's how I alter my lights. It doesn't matter if you use spotlights, area lights, or whatever type of lights you have, it's just whatever works. So for spotlights, I'll usually use those when I want to get a really narrow rim to an area. And for area lights, when I need a broader effect, that's when I'll use those. Thanks for watching. If you want to see final renders, my social media links are below. Like and subscribe, more videos on the way.